Hello, this is Carissa and Tom on Tentacles, the podcast from Crown and Reach. We are feeling our way through the murky waters of strategy and operations in an uncertain world.
And today what we're uncertain about is what does taking children seriously and the OODA loop have to do with Bluey?
What is taking children seriously for a starting question?
Whoa, well, we should say Bluey if you don't know it. That's the first one.
Oh yeah, I'm assuming everyone knows what Bluey is.
Surely everyone has to watch Bluey hundreds of times a day. It is a kids' TV show which is actually, non-ironically, brilliantly written and really good.
If you have to have some sort of cartoon on the menu for when you need it for one of your young children, or older children indeed, then it's the best of the worst, I would say.
It is. The Bluey love is not unfounded. So that's Bluey. And there was an episode of Bluey where...
We should also... Taking children seriously.
Oh yeah, we'll do that. So we're defining them all up front? Okay. Taking children seriously is a philosophy to parenting, isn't it? Which comes out of the philosophy of David Deutsch. And it basically comes... I think it's his version of Popperian fallibilism. So the theory of science proposed by Karl Popper, which is that you should be able to falsify your conjectures. And Deutsch says all knowledge is created not by... You don't teach children by filling their head up, like you're filling a bucket with stuff. Mm-hmm. Instead, children learn the way that anyone else learns, which is by conjecture, testing, feedback, learning, updating their beliefs and getting better explanations.
So the assumption is that everyone, including children, is a universal explainer.
Yes.
Which
That's
means
exactly what that is.
We're getting better and better explanations for the way things are.
Yeah. And this starts with an explanation for why it looks like why the sun rises in the west and sets in the east, or rises in the east and sets in the west. That's it, isn't it? I should know these things. Might be because it's being rolled across the sky by a giant dung beetle.
Sounds good to me.
And that was a fine explanation at the time, but it wasn't a good explanation because you could substitute the dung beetle with another sort of insect, or anything else, in fact, and it would be equally explanatory.
Bluey's rolling the moon across the sun across the sky.
Yeah. And so that's not a great explanation. Once you start improving your explanations, a good explanation is hard to vary, and it's falsifiable, and it fails to be falsified by the evidence.
It reminds me as well of one of our 3-year-old's favourite books, which is the one about Newtonian physics. Is it Newtonian physics? Which is the one that talks about gravity, and then you pointed out to me that gravity isn't really a force, and I was like, what? What? And I feel like that was another kind of example of this, like, fallibilism.
Yeah,
like,
that's
you get
it.
it better, and people are always getting better explanations, but there probably is no perfect explanation.
Exactly.
We can just do better.
Newtonian physics is a good explanation. Einsteinian physics is better. But Newtonian physics was good enough for us to do an awful lot of really clever things. And even Einsteinian physics, we know, has limits where it's wrong at the edges, and there'll be some better explanation that we might come across at some point.
Right.
So anyway, that's the sort of the core of where taking children seriously comes from. But what it becomes then is this fairly radical approach to parenting, isn't it?
Very radical, yes. So radical that I can't remember the pithy elevator pitch for it. Basically, it means not treating children as anything other than a sort of a person who is capable of making their own decisions and should be taken seriously, even when you think they are. I'm floundering. You do a better job of it.
Well, that is the fundamental thesis, isn't it? It's like children are people too. We are all making sense of the world by conjecture, testing, learning. Adults can have wrong explanations too. We can be wrong just as children can be wrong. And the purpose of all of what we're doing is to try to solve problems. That's a sort of Deutschian summary, I would say.
Yeah, so the whole it's my way or the highway or because I said so are not phrases that you would use in a taking children seriously sort of environment.
Exactly, and other forms of coercion. Coercive control, authoritarianism. These are things which I'd say Deutsch is fundamentally opposed to. Sometimes to a point where I think he's got a bit deranged himself. Because there is, I think, since we came across this philosophy several years ago, we came up against like an edge of it that didn't seem to quite work, right?
Exactly. So I think there are, particularly with young children, and the woman who we found out about it through, can't remember her name now.
Sarah Fitzclarridge,
but she has older kids, and I don't know if she was a committed TCS advocate when her kids were toddlers. I'd love to know. I really want to know how she would kind of explain away this problem that I think we've identified with it. Basically, in an ideal world, you would let your child, decide to run out into the road and experience for themselves that that's not such a good idea, and they can have that feedback loop.
They would learn and update their model and have a better explanation.
Exactly, but that clearly doesn't work for matters of life and death, right? Or like really kind of serious matters of safety. You can't just like let your child end their own existence in order to get a feedback loop, right? It's clearly ridiculous. It falls apart at that point.
It falls apart, yeah. It fails on ergodicity, doesn't it? The child
the zero
can't.
Sum,
so the child can't die in order to learn not to drown in the pond.
Mm-hmm. And you clearly have some responsibility for making sure that that doesn't happen to them.
Exactly. So at some point, then, our sort of realization is you can go some way towards this idea of taking children seriously, but you need to sometimes have just boundaries, because you're aware that there are things that kids aren't ready for yet.
Exactly, and it's like, where is that maybe there isn't a firm boundary between things that really are life and death and things that are maybe a bit risky, but let's turn away from the noisy road. I'm trying to signal that we should reverse direction. So like letting a child run out into a road, it's fairly kind of cut and dried, isn't it? But there are things like, would you let them eat some food out of the fridge that is significantly out of date? Like, is that something that they could maybe get a bit sick from and then learn for themselves? Or, like, where is that line?
Where's the line? Do you let them try berries off random bushes in the forest?
Oh, yes, that's a very common discussion that we have with our 3-year-old, isn't it?
Because it's a colourful berry and he'd like to try it. But he likes to eat unripe blackberries, which probably aren't great for him, but it doesn't seem to cause him any problems. So we're okay with that. Right, yeah, whereas I guess that the kind of default, my instinct initially was like, well, but nobody eats green blackberries, so he shouldn't eat them either. But then actually looked it up, and there's not any cold hard reason why you can't eat them other than they just don't taste very nice to most people. That's right, there's not a biochemical reason not to. And so what I think it ends up being, what TCS has ended up being for us, I would say is an interesting... it's a counterpoint to an instinct of sticking with how things ought to be. You know what I mean? We've had that episode about shoulding yourself, shoulding all over yourself. That was one of the early ones, wasn't it? It was, yeah. Yes, so... And I guess the tricky thing is a lot of it is we're not even aware that we are falling into these default patterns. And they just are, to a degree, they're necessary shortcuts for being able to live a life, because if you considered every single decision for its own, pros and cons all day long, there's just not time. There just isn't time. So anyway, yes, you were saying it's just being open to reconsidering as often as you can. I think so. When your kid seems to want to do something differently to how your default mode would have it be done. Yeah, and it's an opportunity then, I think, Deutsch and Sarah Fitzclarridge and everyone would argue that it's an opportunity for you to rethink your own model of the world and to get better explanations. There's often things that you do because that's how it was done when you were a kid, and now you find yourself passing that on, and then it's a chance to stop and go, well, hang on a minute, is there a good reason? What is the reason behind that? Should we re-examine it? But the interesting question then becomes, I think there's two things that are interesting. One is, which we're constantly navigating, isn't it? The hardware of the child's brain is changing all the time. And so there is a point, or there are lots of points, it's like a gradation, isn't it? Where when they're a complete baby, like our new baby. Yeah, the reason this conversation is a little bit
shabby, like the good old days.
Hey.
It's because we are navigating roads with a buggy and trying not to fall into the river.
Or get tripped over by people walking dogs.
Or run over, indeed, by running out into the road like a 3-year-old.
Absolutely, I was about to try that, test that theory. But yeah, so the baby obviously is communicating in one way, but it's difficult to have like a grown-up conversation with them. Their needs are fairly simple. And then at some point, a child becomes a full person who can make these conjectures and test the world for themselves, and where you no longer need to exert any coercion over them. But there's a gradation in between there, isn't there?
And I think the moment when it sort of semi-clicked for me a couple of years ago was like imagining that your child is an adult with an equivalent level of capabilities, like physically, emotionally, mentally, all of those things.
Yeah.
How would you treat a friend who maybe, I don't know, like maybe they have like a broken leg so they can't walk very well, like that, use that as a corollary for like how would you engage with your child if they've only just learned to walk. How would you treat a friend? Would you boss your friend around and say, call them names if they fall over? I know that's a terrible example of parenting.
Or would you just pick your friend up without asking them whether they wanted to be picked up?
Exactly. So kind of just like the adult knows best, I'm going to make decisions for you, that sort of thing.
Yeah. And instead it encourages you to enter into that spirit of problem solving with the friend, with the child. We can see a problem here, we might have different perspectives on it. The child might not be worried about the fact that we won't be on time to this appointment. That's not the problem they're trying to solve. But that's the problem you're trying to solve. Which gets us interestingly to the Bluey episode, doesn't it?
It's about time. We've dangled that carrot some time ago.
Because the Bluey episode is going to be the bridge into a more John Boyd OODA style of how we learn. But let's go to the Bluey episode first. So there's this episode where Bluey and her sister are in the bath. I think that's it, isn't it?
So Bluey and her sister, they are
6 and 4
blue heeler dogs in Australia, in a house.
And they love
mum and dad.
And they love playing games. And their parents are unreasonably good at parenting generally.
Oh yes, there's plenty of people who hate Bluey because the standard of playfulness and empathy feels at times unattainable.
But it's worth watching.
They must have a whole fleet of household staff. There's one episode where one of the kids and the mum spend all day making an omelette for the dad's birthday, which involves hundreds of broken eggs.
And making an absolute mess of everything.
And just enduring patience that is superhuman. Yeah. Anyway, yes.
That
is by the by.
That's by the by. In this episode, Bluey and her sister are in the bath and they're playing a game where they're serving burgers. That's right, isn't it?
That's right, yeah.
And the dad is the customer buying burgers. But here's the wrinkle, it's time for bed. They need to get out of the bath, go to bed because it's bedtime, and if they don't go to bed soon, then the parents know it's going to create problems tomorrow. So the dad... the mum comes in and says it's bedtime, but
she's
dad...
about to pull the plug out in the bath.
That's right.
Do the kind of, I'm going to take control as a parent for the good of the greater good.
But the dad has been reading this book, which sounds like it's a sort of play on taking children seriously.
Yeah, sort of a straw man of taking children seriously.
Which is basically saying we shouldn't be meanie parents, we should listen to the children, involve them in the decision making, and so he decides to do that.
I mean, it goes further. I think verbatim it says, let the children make their own decisions.
Right, that was it. Mm-hmm. That was it. And so he then comes to the kids and says, hey, look, would you like to get out of the bath now and go to bed and then you'll be happy tomorrow? Or would you like to stay in the bath and play longer and then you'll go to bed and you'll be tired and grumpy tomorrow? And so I think that is his first mistake.
Yes. Yeah. No surprises which one they picked.
Yeah. So the kids then pick, well, we're going to keep playing the game.
Until they are literally freezing solid in the bath an hour later.
And even then, the freezing solid isn't enough for them to decide they want to get out.
No, they're still loving it. They're still having so much fun coming up with different variants of this game. What is it? The burger shop The dad decides the burger shop is shut, but then Bluey says, "Oh, it's now a taco shop."
Okay, now it's a taco shop. Yeah.
So she outsmarts him.
Yep. And this is where it gets a little bit Boyd to sort of prefigure that. She is absolutely inside his OODA loop, outsmarting him all the way, because he doesn't understand what game he's playing and what game they're playing. So he even gets to the point where they're freezing cold and he still can't persuade them. The reason is that he's not genuinely, or Deutsch would have it, he's not genuinely entering into a spirit of problem solving with the kids.
No, he's not playing a game at all. He's not problem solving. He has, as you put it the other day when we were just having a chat in the kitchen, he has an agenda. His agenda is to get them to go to bed soon.
Yeah.
He doesn't really want to give them agency to let them choose what they want to do. He's trying to he's hoping that he can persuade them to do it his way while, kind of feigning to let them have their say.
Yeah, but he's never listening to their position really, is he? Or understanding what they're trying to get out of it. And so it falls flat. And they know that that's happening. The kids are smart and they figure it out. And so they're running rings around him. And in the end, you get to the point where the mum comes in, the kids are shivering in the bath, they've decided to open a taco shop now, it's an hour later, bedtime's long gone, and she just pulls the plug. And that resolves it.
And then in the next scene, the book is in the bin. He's like, well, I'm done with that sort of nonsense.
Yeah. But I think it's then a good illustration of taking children seriously done wrong, and where he's outsourced his responsibility to make that call as to where is it a boundary to set and where is it a problem for us to solve together. He's tried to outsource that to an external authority, this book.
Interesting.
And that in itself has created his weak spot, hasn't it?
But so how is he supposed to learn about this other perspective if you can't read about it in a book and then use the book?
So he could read about it in the book, but then, as we've experienced with taking children seriously, you can't just read the book and then do it. You have to then try it, get it wrong. Like, you're now bootstrapping a new model, a new explanation for the world. And so you've got to try stuff, get it wrong, learn from it, try it again differently, figure it out. Which is how I think every time we've learned something from a book, we haven't just read it and then done it and it's been great. We've read it, tried it, got it badly wrong, realised why that we'd misunderstood the book, reread the book, now it makes sense, try it again, no, still wrong, gradually figure it out through repetition.
Yeah, I feel like that's largely true. That can't be true for everything. Some books tell you how to do something simple and you can just do it in one take and it's okay.
I suppose so, yeah. It is the difference between a book that is giving you a step-by-step process versus a book that is bootstrapping a complex skill.
Right, anything to do with other humans is not a step-by-step, bish-bash-bosh, done in one go thing.
Bingo. Which brings us to Boyd. So Deutsch looked at the world of Popper and various other philosophers, and he constructed his theory of how we develop knowledge. And it's this idea that you work together with people and you use a shared approach, collaborative approach to conjecture, testing the knowledge, etc., etc. Now, John Boyd, in the 1960s through 70s and 80s, he looked at the same source material. So he'd read Popper, he'd read about Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, he'd read Gödel and all these sorts of things. And he was constructing his own model of how humans construct knowledge, because he'd come up with, as a fighter pilot, he'd come up with this thing called energy maneuverability theory, which explained why you can't have a plane, I think this is the simple thing, you can't have a plane which is incredibly fast and also incredibly manoeuvrable. There's some trade-off between them because of physics. You just can't have everything. And so he was a fierce critic of various US military proposals to try and build a plane that was the everything plane, because his theory told him why it wouldn't work. And his preference was for manoeuvrability because he was a fighter pilot and he was a very good fighter pilot. So anyway, he then was wondering, well, how on earth did I, just this normal Joe fighter pilot, come up with this theory when that's not, I don't understand where it came from. And so he started to construct his theory of how you learn and how knowledge is formed.
He tried to reverse engineer his own brilliance.
Yeah.
Great, I love that.
Yeah, that's it. And so he then came up with, like, the only paper he wrote was Destruction and Creation, which is his idea of how knowledge changes. And it's the Deutschian idea of a better explanation. But in order for you to adopt a better explanation, you have to destroy the explanation you had before. And so that's destruction and creation.
Right.
And that's something which can be, I think, challenging for people to do. He loved it. He loved to have a situation where he realised that his worldview was in error, and he would just destroy it and have a new one instead.
Was he born without the loss aversion gene?
I think he might have been. He was definitely neurospicy, should we put it that way. And he wasn't always popular. So, you might have heard of what this eventually evolved into, and it was his OODA loop. OODA, observe, orient, decide and act, which is often drawn as these 4 bubbles going round in a loop. But that's completely wrong. It's actually something that's much more like a nested set of feedback loops, which everything goes into everything. And the whole thing is oriented around orientation. So your orientation, and this is something we talk about, the stories you're telling about the world, they constrain the options for action you can consider, but they also constrain what you can even notice.
So rather than a loop, everything is interrelated.
Exactly.
Everything kind of going both ways across all different possible connections.
Yes.
Oh my God.
So there you go. And so his whole... The idea of getting inside someone's OODA loop isn't just about cycling round the loop faster than them. That's not necessarily a good thing to do. It's about interfering with the other person's OODA loop so that they get disoriented. So their orientation is destabilised faster than they can restabilise it. So an example that I've seen used that I think is quite good is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which is like a grappling martial art. It's a bit like a sort of wrestling or judo sort of thing. And an experienced, if you're a beginner practitioner of this, you will know some moves, you'll have some options for action, and you'll have some clues to look for, but you'll be in your head a lot of the time. You haven't trained it enough for it to be embodied. So you'll know your handful of moves, you will detect something that you sense in your opponent, and therefore you'll think, oh, I'm in this position, I could try this move, and you'll try it. So that's how you work if you're a beginner. If you're against a beginner, you're both okay, you can work like that, and you'll muddle through it. But an experienced practitioner has already embodied a lot of these patterns, so they don't have to go through their brain.
Is it like, I mean, to give the kind of naff 90s metaphor of the Matrix, is it like when you're in bullet time?
It's a bit like bullet time, yeah, because you can see with a much greater resolution as you're going through. The experienced practitioner has a model of how the beginner is going to act and understands more options and more signals and can process it faster because they're not having to think it through logically or deductively. They can deliberately do something which makes the beginner slowly start to take action, which the experienced fighter has already anticipated and uses it to trap the beginner even more because they know what they're going to do. And so they are doing things to disorient the opponent and thus defeat them. Nice. And this was Boyd's entire thesis of strategy, which when I came across this, I thought was a bit horrible, is that strategy always depends on ambiguity and deception.
And I don't know a huge amount about the art of war, but a lot of that's about deception as well, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. So he studied Sun Tzu quite a lot, and also Clausewitz, who was a German general who had prefigured Blitzkrieg and came up with some of the concepts that Boyd really liked, which we won't go into now.
Yeah, maybe this is something to put a sidebar on because maybe it's a different episode, but like, do you as in Tom, do you think that deception is always a necessary part of strategy?
This is where it gets difficult. In that when I first came across that, I thought, oh, that's horrible, I don't like it. And do you know what that is? That's because naturally I gravitate to a more Popper Deutsch scientific method approach to creating knowledge, where it is collaborative and where we're all agreed, we're all trying to access the truth. However, in some situations, and particularly when you get into corporate life, I can absolutely now understand, and I'm starting to accept, that there is necessary that sometimes your strategy involves ambiguity and deception.
Cool. So it's not necessarily that you always have to have those elements, but that they are often useful and necessary.
Yes, I think that's fair. And in order to defeat an adversary, the other thing Boyd talks about is variety, rapidity, and harmony, I think. So you need to act yourself in a way that is harmonious, but which creates rapid changes and variety for your opponent, which disorients them as well.
And actually, I've just had quite a funny thought, which is that our methods quite often do, by default, have a bit of an element of not deception and ambiguity, but we often do end up sort of quote unquote tricking the client into seeing something they hadn't seen before or weren't originally going to consider.
Absolutely, yeah. We strategically, I would say we strategically deploy ambiguity quite a lot, in that when we're creating, say, pitch provocations, they are deliberately just ambiguous enough, and we overwhelm with a lot of novel information and things like that.
And when we often talk about a Trojan horse, and I mean, you could definitely describe a Trojan horse as a form of deception.
Totally.
It's just a nice sounding, palatable form of deception.
Only it's not very palatable if you're the Trojans and you've been murdered in your beds by the Greeks.
No, well, they're not our clients, luckily. So
that reminds me of I don't know if you never watched Red Dwarf. You read the books. But
I did read the book. I liked the books.
The books are great. The series is also great. One day we'll watch it. There's a bit where Lister's talking about the Trojan horse and saying that what we get from that is beware of Greeks bearing gifts. But the real lesson we should take is beware of Trojans, they're complete smegheads.
Perfect. Corporate tagline.
But anyway, so there we go. Now we're going back to the Bluey episode, and notice how the dad in this case, he's called Bandit, he was not deploying ambiguity or deception. He was clear about his agenda. He knew it was bedtime and he was trying to get the kids to go to sleep, and he had very few moves in his belt. He was the beginner judo player.
And
meanwhile,
the kids moves to work.
Yeah, he did. Meanwhile, the kids were deploying variety, rapidity. They kept coming up with new ideas faster than he could deal with them, totally disorienting him and running rings around him. So I think that there's an argument to say that in that episode what he needed was a more Boydian approach rather than a taking children seriously approach. And maybe the art of parenting is combining the two.
Right.
And you just talked about another example earlier with you follow a parenting blogger who her kid was in a spitting game.
Oh yeah, before we get onto that though, I've got a thought that I want to unpack with you. Are they not, I feel like they're incompatible. If you are, I don't know, I could see them the kind of the Boydian one being used in one context and the Deutschian one being used in another context, but when it's your family, I don't know, I feel like there are maybe some adverse consequences to being nicey 1 minute and then doing the Boydian thing the next minute. That's quite, I don't know, I'm finding it hard to articulate, but
I know exactly what you mean. It's something that I think I also would say we struggle with. I think it's a paradox that means there's probably something there. Because you're right, what you might characterise it as the Deutschian view is about purely collaborative scientific knowledge creation, whereas the Boydian view is about personal adversarial knowledge creation. And they do seem incompatible from that perspective, don't they?
Maybe it sort of feels like good cop, bad cop. Can one person be both, or is that just gaslighting someone? I don't know.
That would be the risk, wouldn't it? Yeah.
But I think you're saying that there is space for both of them in the same context. Is that right?
I think it has to be that. But I would say it's going to depend on. I think you're right. You shift it based on the context, because there are going to be situations where you are if you have unity of purpose, if you are all agreed that you're a community who's working together to the same ends, then and you all kind of get on, then you could lean much further Deutschian. because you can just be quite upfront and open about what you're trying to do and what you think and things, and it's safe to be wrong and all that sort of stuff. That sounds lovely, and it's what I would like to have happen in many situations. But I think it's fair to say that is not the default state for groups of humans.
No, it takes extra effort and extra understanding.
Yeah.
Which means, it's not the default.
Not the default. And so then there must be a need for the other style. You could have a family that is able to be very like Deutschian, very taking children seriously, but then let's say you go to a situation where you are up against other families, like it's then a council meeting, something like that, and now there are people with very different opinions, and the game is no longer about generating knowledge, the game is about defeating the opponents.
Yeah, true, but like I think what you were talking about before is, can you use the two different approaches on your own children and have that not be incompatible?
I was, yeah. So this is then collapsing to one context. But then, well, what about this example of the parenting person that you were following?
Oh yeah, so shout out to Mia at Playful Heart Parenting.
Nice.
Very, very good stuff about using playfulness to navigate difficult parenting challenges, and also just generally to have a better time with your kids and with yourself, because we all need to be a bit more playful. Lord knows we do.
We do, and
it's
do you know what?
Stamped out of us at a young age.
Back to Deutsch, playfulness and following what's interesting and fun is one of his guiding principles in terms of science and creating knowledge about the world. So straight tick, taking children seriously, would advocate for playfulness every time. But here's the example. This parent noticed their child was spitting.
Right, so I'll give you the quick the quick rundown of it. So it was they're very good friends and their friend's son, and the two kids were playing together. I think they're 4 or 5 years old, and it was towards the end of the day, the witching hour, and the two kids started, spitting and egging each other on to spit more, and like the more dribble the better, drool flying around everywhere. Like that episode of Taskmaster where people had to lick a lolly without keeping their tongue out. Somebody managed to keep their tongue out for like half an hour or something, and it was absolutely astonishing. Trigger warning: don't look up that clip. Or do. But yeah, so anyway, they tried all the usual things of like asking them to stop, all the kind of traditional, typical. If your kid was listening and in a good mood, they'd do what you asked, and there would be no more bother of it. But anyway, end of the day, kids egging each other on, nothing was working. The spitting just made it the like traditional stuff just made it worse. So Mia ended up deploying one of her playful strategies, which is called playing the opposite, which is where you pretend that you'll be like really angry or confused or otherwise like discombobulated if the kid does what you ask them to do. So she said something like, "I'll be so mad if you start beeping like a car and suddenly it's as if there are loads of cars in the house," or something like that. Yep. And they took the bait, and then they stopped spitting, and then they were beeping like cars. And she pretended to be mad about that. She pretended to be mad and confused and like, why are all these cars in my house? What's going on? And then she escalated as well, didn't she? It escalated to, I'll be even more mad if you are honking like a monster truck that's stuck in traffic. And then it went down along that line, and they had a really nice fun time playing that game for the remaining half an hour, and it was the best moment of the day. There you go. But she was completely deceiving them. Yeah. And so she was to get them to do what she wanted, yeah. But she was also understanding the problem they were trying to solve. They wanted to play a game that was transgressing and getting a rise out of her. So your argument is no harm was done to them by redirecting their play into a slightly different area. Yeah. They were still getting what they wanted, and she got what she wanted. I think you could argue that. I think it is. Yeah, so you got taking children seriously. She's understood the problem that they were trying to solve and the problem that she was trying to solve, and she's come at it not directly with any sort of coercion or manipulation. Well, it is manipulation in a way, isn't it? But she's not trying to persuade them out of their position. Yeah. She's trying to find an oblique way to come at it and give everybody a solution that works. Yeah, and I think that's another sort of sticking point that I often get hung up on, and maybe it's not worth worrying about and I'm just splitting hairs, but this sort of idea that, manipulation is a loaded word, and generally we don't want to do manipulation, but sometimes with parenting, like, there's an unavoidable aspect of manipulation. Yeah,
with any social encounter.
Right, yeah. So anyway, I've put a pin in that for me to worry about at a later date. But you're right, there is an aspect of manipulation into getting the kids to do what she wanted. But I think that's part of just the inevitable power dynamic, right? You've got a parent with more power and a kid with less power. Can you ever have an imbalance of power without there being like somebody's manipulating somebody?
Oh, that's a really good question.
Oh God, do we want to wade into this topic?
I don't think
area?
we do.
No.
But that then pulls the whole thing across to corporate environments, doesn't it? Businesses. There is always an imbalance of power on any team. So you need to bear that in mind when you're mixing your particular brew of taking colleagues seriously and
to put
OODA loop deception.
Just to clarify as well, like the imbalance of power, I mean, it has a positive like aspect to it, which is the more powerful person takes more responsibility, right? So the parent is taking, they're responsible for, in many respects, for the child, for the well-being of the child. Something happens to the child, the parent is liable a lot of the time, etc., etc. So, like, I think it's quite hard to talk about power imbalances without people thinking it's just a bad thing.
Oh yeah,
like,
no,
it kind of has that
exactly
baked into it, doesn't it? But I think it doesn't have to be bad, but you have to acknowledge that it's there.
Yes, I think that's a healthy way of putting it. Acknowledge that it's there, and acknowledge that there's another boundary on the parent, in that the parent can't just kick the child out of their house. This is a 3-year-old. If you had a grown adult who was an acquaintance who was in your house spitting, you might just ask them to leave and you wouldn't let them come back.
Right.
But you can't do that with your 3-year-old. You've got to solve the problem collaboratively.
Well, I mean, in the distant past, people probably would have kicked their 3-year-olds out into the,
or beaten them senseless.
Oh, let's not go there.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, we live in today, thankfully, and not yesterday.
But yeah, does that resolve it all then? We've been on a wonderful journey through taking children seriously, Boyd's OODA loop and strategy being, or knowledge creation being adversarial versus taking children seriously's collaborative version. And we've illustrated this all with a episode of Bluey and an example of a spitting toddler.
Yeah, I feel like there isn't really a neat conclusion, which is often the case with these conversations.
Yeah.
Where did we get to? There's space for both approaches. I still don't know if you can use them both like in the same day with the same people. I'm not sure about that, but
I'm settled on this. I think the toddler spitting example was a perfect example of both being used.
Oh, okay.
I think the misreading of the book that Bluey's dad did is that he expected that it could be done on like the surface level. He expected to be able to have a conversation with his 6 and 4-year-old like he'd have with a colleague where they both shared the same aims. And that's the naive way of approaching it, I think, which I think a lot of people get trapped on with taking children seriously. You think it's just incredibly permissive parenting, where it's not, is it?
Yeah, no, it's definitely not. It's definitely not. The book has never been published from this woman, Sarah Fitzclarence.
No, she's been writing and rewriting it since the 90s.
And I wish she'd just bloody publish it. And this comes back to the whole fallibilism thing, right? So you can never have the perfect encapsulation of knowledge. Like, as soon as you release it, it's going to become out of date because we'll have a better explanation, right?
Yeah, and that's our bet for what's happened, is she keeps rewriting it, and then by the time she's rewritten it, enough time has passed that she's developed and has new theories.
Exactly.
And so now she thinks it's wrong and so has to rewrite it again.
But I wish she'd publish it, because I've tried talking to people about this stuff, and with the sleep deprivation of having young children, I just can't. I don't represent her arguments well enough. But yeah, could you just try explaining to me again how the situation with the spitting is an example of both the Boydian and the Deutschian working in harmony?
Yeah, so you could see it as, I'm totally just flanneling and making up a narrative here, and I might be completely wrong about what happened. It may be that your parenting teacher is by default a deceptive snake, and that's her general way of manipulating her children. But I don't think it was that. I think you described that she had this situation developing where the kids had one aim, And their aim was to play this game where they were spitting and outdoing each other and getting a rise out of their parents.
Okay, right, but that's...
She tried a bunch of things in order to understand what it is that they actually wanted. So she tried
they wanted
various...
to spit, that's the
Exactly,
thing.
they wanted to spit.
But if in the taking children seriously, surely she should just let them keep on spitting.
Well, no, because then she has a problem, because she doesn't want them to be spitting. So they have to work together to solve the problem. Because of the situation they're in, they don't have a choice. She could, if it wasn't her house, she could just leave, but it is her house. So she has a problem with the spitting happening. She also, like you said, she's got a responsibility to raise children who understand when it's appropriate to spit and when it isn't, but she probably just didn't like it. Is that fair?
Yeah, but if she doesn't like it and the kid does, then who's to say that the adult's preference gets to win out? Like, that seems to be counter to taking children seriously.
Yeah, but notice what she did. She tried various of her tried and true parenting techniques, like talking to the kid, trying to explain perhaps why it wasn't a good idea to spit, etc., etc. And what she learned, I would say, was that it was less about the spitting itself and more about the excitement of transgression and the game and outdoing each other. And so she came up with a new solution in combination with the kid, understanding the kid better. She came up with a new solution which would enable the kid to solve their goals of outdoing one another and transgressing, or feeling they're transgressing, while also solving her problem. And that involved both collaboration and deeper understanding of what was really going on and the problems they were both trying to solve, and an element of deception.
Okay, so the argument there would be that the medium of the game was irrelevant. The fact that it happened to be spitting doesn't matter, and therefore she could sub it out with honking or something less annoying.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then everyone ends up having a better time.
I mean, it is persuasive. I think you could easily argue that isn't the case, but...
Yeah, but I suppose if she wouldn't be writing about the story if she'd been wrong about her theory, her explanation, that the kid really wanted transgression and the play, because then the kid would have continued spitting. She would have suggested, I'll be really annoyed if you start beeping like a car.
But I guess
and the kid would have continued spitting because it was really about the spitting.
But the underlying assumption is that the spitting is bad. And, isn't there a taking children seriously / Popperian, Deutschian view which might say, well, maybe spitting is good and we should do more spitting, but we're stopping people from doing that because culturally we think it's not good?
There is that, I suppose. With spitting particularly, you could run forward the experiment, and I wonder if she did... It would be idealistic, wouldn't it, for her from a taking children seriously perspective to have considered all of that and run some sort of experiment where she flobbed all over her own house and then found out what happened.
I mean, I'm sort of trying to play devil's advocate a bit, because I wouldn't let the kid carry on spitting either, so it feels like a foregone conclusion that it was a good thing to do, and that she was treating her children very well indeed by redirecting them. But I feel like there is an argument against that still. There is, yeah. I think the right path is it is correct to have considered whether maybe the parent is wrong, that spitting is fine actually. Or might have hidden benefits that we have yet to discover.
Oh yeah, maybe it's got healing properties.
Or maybe it's if you spit on the outside of your house, it repels the heat of the sun so that we can survive this ongoing heat wave.
Yeah, or it stops annoying neighbours from coming round, and so you get some peace back.
There could. Who knows?
It annoys
what
her.
gems there are yet to discover.
It annoys the mother's parents, and that gives her sick pleasure as well. Maybe it's one of those things. But I think it's fair to say you can run a fairly quick thought experiment and go, and this is where you bring in some Kantian imperative, and say, would I want to live in a world where everyone was flobbing all the time? And it's quick to say, actually no, so therefore...
But that's still prioritising your own preferences over the preference of the other person, right? Would I want to live in that world? Never mind what my kid wants to do.
Yeah, and then you do get to the tricky thing here, which you've already got at, which is the parent has a responsibility, the parent has power over, and there is something about the nature of a toddler's brain that is different from a fully formed person, which, to wrap it all up, I think the whole thing, this whole conversation we're having, comes out of our feeling that taking children seriously doesn't take this objection seriously. Which is, you're assuming that everybody from baby to 97-year-old is a person who is a universal explainer, who is capable of updating their model based on learning from the world.
Right, always has sort of noble scientific goals.
Yep,
from
all of
dawn
that.
till dusk.
There you go. And the reality is that is not the world we live in. And if it's something where the consequences are going to be either fatal or the feedback is going to come far too slowly for it to be possible for the child to learn from it, because they don't link up cause and effect over very long at all, more than a few seconds. So they're not going to realise that they're going to be social pariahs in 20 years' time if they carry on spitting.
Right.
You know, so it's a place where perhaps it's part of the parent's role is to find ways to create the feedback loops faster. Which reminds me of the getting run over by a car learning.
Yes, I was
you can't
just about
explain
to say
it to people.
But you could do a demonstration of, you know, on the driveway, the child is watching the car, one parent looking after the child, the other parent or another adult, whatever, driving over an apple.
Yep.
Slowly, and the child then observing what happens to the apple.
And realising how firm an apple is and how soft they are. And yeah, there's a way to make it more visceral, isn't there?
Yeah.
More understandable.
And I guess, what would be this a corollary for the spitting? Maybe like having someone else spit all over the child's most precious toy. Oh
my God.
Something maybe.
What's this about? Responsible parenting.
But like something in that area of is that kind of what you were getting at though?
I suppose, yeah. This is where parenting this way, it's like you said, this is not something that's realistic for somebody who is time deprived and sleep deprived to do, because it involves enormous creativity and there's so many challenges every day. You've got to pick your battles.
There are. I think if you just do it once in a while, like pick something to do in that manner, I feel like that's enough, probably.
Yeah. Let's say it is.
We should do the apple experiment.
We should. We've been meaning to do that for ages.
I prefer that to toddler reigns.
Yeah, definitely. Toddler
Which may
reigns,
well be our next step.
but they feel like the wrong direction, don't
definitely.
they?
I'm not 100% serious about the toddler reigns, but I do have increasing
You are.
sympathy for people who feel the need to use them.
Yeah.
We currently just don't go out.
Yeah. Or go out in a state of constant stress.
Yes. Well, there we go. Has this one actually recorded? Is it recording?
It's recording. Yay, we have a full recording.
Thank goodness. And Tom's about to get eaten by a wasp.
So we'll call it there, shall we?
Okay. Till next time.